Hello, everybody. I'm Ian Bellina, and welcome to the 100X Show. And this is the first episode in the show where we talk about people doing big ideas in crypto, 100X ideas, from entrepreneurs to investors to founders to YouTubers. And today we have the pleasure of being joined by the legendary one and only Tone Vays. Welcome, Tone. How are you?
Hey Ian, doing great. I got really nice scenery in the background. I am in the Republic of Georgia, but at the moment I am outside of the capital, Tbilisi. A friend of mine, we went out here up in the mountains a little bit. He's building a house, and we're gonna grill some barbecue in a bit. And I enjoy traveling the world, which I'm sure we're gonna get into in this episode.
Nice, nice. Yeah, so is that your first time in Georgia?
It is. It's one of those countries I always wanted to go to. Georgia and Azerbaijan. They're two neighboring countries. Most people cannot find them on a map. I don't blame them. They're not exactly the most popular. But back when I grew up in communist Russia, Soviet Union, these were like the southernmost countries. They actually border like Turkey and Iraq and like that region. And these were the southernmost countries of Russia, and they were very, very different. And back then, there wasn't a lot of travel going on, but these were like the countries that people would talk about how exotic they are and how they're great to visit. And when I got older, I said, you know what? I have to go here because I heard so much about them when I was a kid. And they didn't disappoint. I'm having a really good time. I'm really enjoying Tbilisi. And I just got back from Baku, Azerbaijan. I just got here from Baku, Azerbaijan. So yeah, that's what my current life is giving me, and I love it.
Now, when people said that there are so many good things to do in Georgia, what exactly were they talking about? Was it the going out, the nature? What in particular kind of got your curiosity with Georgia?
So people ask me often, uh, what are my favorite countries or my favorite cities? And things are so different. You like certain cities for what they are, but Tbilisi is making it into my top 5 cities now. I really like
Wow,
it.
wow,
Yeah,
okay.
it's very safe. You don't have to worry about that part. People are nice. The food is really good. As you probably know, your dietary choices matter a lot in the crypto space. We're not exactly sure why, but they do.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
meat is pretty popular here, especially pork, and also cheese and bread a little bit. But uh, food is really excellent. People are nice, uh, pretty young. Feels like a pretty young crowd, and there is something about streets that don't have cars but have a lot of restaurants, a lot of outdoor seating, a lot of rooftop bars. It's just really cool to walk around in. It reminds me a lot of Ukraine, another one of my favorite cities, which is Kiev. And this has a very similar vibe. And not that I don't want to call myself cheap, but I really like traveling through countries where US dollars go a long way. This is why I like Thailand. This is why I like Ukraine. I like Georgia. Because look, I want to hold on to as much of my Bitcoin as I can. And you can really enjoy life in these countries and still, you can have a very high standard of living and still retain a lot of the savings. And I really appreciate that. And I want to give back to these economies, not the economies that are very, very rich.
That makes so much sense. Myself as well, right? So last year we had our crypto world tour, did 35 countries in 12 months, and we definitely love traveling the world. I've been to Ukraine, Kiev, twice actually, and it's definitely quite the place. I've not been to Georgia. I did go to Russia during the World Cup, and one of our crypto friends from Georgia came through there and hosted us, and we actually had a chance to try out some traditional Georgian food. Now, okay, so let's get into Tone Vays. Who is Tone Vays?
Oh boy. So similar to yourself, I got my career in this realm started in the finance world, but I started late. I think I was like 27 or 26. So I started finance late. After undergrad, I had a couple of degrees in undergrad, wasn't sure what I wanted to do. My grades actually kept getting better the older I got. My high school grades weren't all that good. My college grades were a little bit better. Actually, they were significantly better. I guess I started taking it seriously. And I still believe that college is useful. I know a lot of people say for entrepreneurs, you know, you shouldn't go to college, you shouldn't go to college. I tend to disagree with that a little bit. We can get into that if you like. But after graduating college, I spent a year or so as a high school teacher, and I really didn't like it. So I wanted to do something different. My undergraduate degrees had nothing to do with business, had nothing to do with finance. I've actually never even taken a business or a finance course in undergrad. So I went to grad school and decided to pick something different. I saw my friends that were finance majors making really good money. This was on the rebound off the dot-com crash. And I wanted to make money too, because high school teaching wasn't paying very well. And it's a very frustrating job, especially in New York City where I was. So I went and got a master's in financial engineering. But now I had a nice high-end degree in quantitative finance, but zero experience. And you know that if you have no experience, Wall Street ain't hiring you unless you're like from MIT or Berkeley or Carnegie Mellon. You ain't getting in. So it was a struggle. So I ended up being a college professor for about, again, another year and a half. So by the time I got my first break and got my job at Bear Stearns, no less, I was already like 26. Now, on my path there, I had learned to trade and I had started trading. We can talk about that as well, how that set off a completely different career. And ironically, I learned to trade around 2003, 2004, around the time I was finishing my master's degree. And I scraped whatever money I had together. I paid a lot of money to learn how to trade. Scraped some money together to open my first, portfolio. I was trading on my own money. And I destroyed that portfolio. I took it down to zero.
Wow.
Because I kept shorting the real estate market starting in 2006, because I felt that real estate was overvalued. And I thought I was going to make it big, shorting the hell out of the real estate, get myself into the movie The Big Short, in hindsight speaking, right? So, and I ended up being 6 months too early. So I ran out of money in early 2007 and got a job at Bear Stearns, which ironically about 9 months later went bankrupt because of the real estate bubble.
So how'd you feel when all that happened? Must have been something.
I was happy. Like I knew, like when that happens, I knew I didn't really, I kind of failed as a trader my first go around, but I really didn't. I didn't fail in my analysis. I failed in risk management. And this is why when I came back as a trader, I was significantly better because I learned my lessons of risk management, that the market can stay irrational longer than you can stay liquid. But I was very happy for my new job at Bear Stearns. It was a high salary job. And prior to, I think the first time I ever left the country, the first time I ever had a stamp in my US passport, because I did grow up in Russia, so that doesn't count. I came to America when I was like 10 years old or so. So the traveling that I did, all the traveling that you do prior to 18 shouldn't really count because you're with your parents, you're being chaperoned. It's a different world, right? So the first time I ever left the country, again, Canada doesn't count either. The first time I left the country, I believe was, I got my job in 2007. So I think the first time I left the country was like 2008 or 2009. So that was the first time I started traveling. I was like 28, 29 years old, the first time my passport got stamped. So I was really late to a lot of the things that are happening right now. But I've made up for it big time in what I've done in the last 10 years, especially the last 5 years. But I was really happy for that job because it was finally a high paying job because my family grew up pretty poor. I didn't have a lot of resources. Went to public school, went to a state school for undergrad. I was happy with my grad school because I got a scholarship and a free ride for grad school. So again, I wasn't going to go to like MIT or something, and pay that kind of money, or Princeton, but we didn't have it. And I didn't want to put myself in debt. So there were some choices that I made that were smart. Yes, it took me an extra year and a half to find my first job. But I came out of grad school with zero debt because I didn't have to pay for it, as opposed to paying $20,000, $30,000 for grad school and having that debt to have to pay off. So these were some of the choices that I've made at that age. And when Bear Stearns was collapsing, for me, it wasn't that bad because I knew I was a hard worker. I wouldn't call myself the smartest guy in the office, and people underestimate Wall Street. They really do. Like, you're in the crypto space, and you talk to the people in the crypto space, and you're sitting there trying to figure out, all right, is this guy really smart, or is this guy, like, if he went to college, he would have like failed? Like, you just don't know.
It's very tough in crypto to kind of see who's smart
to
and
gauge.
who's not, especially on Twitter.
Yeah, especially on Twitter. I remember when I'm in San Francisco. You go to San Francisco often?
Yeah, I've been there a few times.
When I stream from events at San Francisco, I like to interview random people at events, and in between the guests, I like to play this game with my audience. All right, so the guy we just interviewed, homeless or millionaire? Because it's hard to tell in San Francisco.
Yeah. I mean, so for me, I'm based in DC, where DC is kind of a lot more politically correct. So it's easier to tell in most places because people are kind of pretty much, they are who they see, who they appear to be. Okay, so that's very interesting. So you go to graduate school, you start working at Bear Stearns. It goes under, you were trading, working as a professor. Now this entire
No. I quit. I was a professor before I got that job. So
okay.
then I was just focusing on Wall Street. So when Bear Stearns went under, JP Morgan bought Bear Stearns. And a lot of people got fired, but we were a functioning, profitable, self-sustaining, and independent unit that Bear Stearns owned. So we were in actually a different building on our own floor. So because our unit was profitable and we were building risk models for hedge funds, our services were in very high demand all throughout 2008 and 2009. So we were actually not concerned for our jobs. We might have been like the only unit of Bear Stearns that were not concerned for our jobs at all. And JP Morgan took over our unit, and then they sold our subsidiary that I was a part of to another company, I believe in 2011 or 2010, something like that. And then none of us liked that company. A bunch of us quit, went to a different company, but that's not that important. But trading was always my passion. But going back to working on Wall Street, there were some really smart people there, like really, really smart. Like your boss and his boss, like you really want to keep your mouth shut because you won't even finish your bullshit sentence before they call you out on it. Am I wrong?
Yeah, I mean, makes sense, right? It's Wall Street. It's where it's the biggest place in the world for finance.
Yeah, it's a true capitalist system. Like you're not going to make it to the top unless you are really smart and you know what you're doing. And it gets a very bad rap. Like Goldman Sachs gets a pretty bad rap. Like, the octopus squid that is there to destroy the world. Most people that are hired at Goldman Sachs are PhDs, physics, mathematics, computer science. Like these are not the kind of guys who are, hey, I'm going to go get a physics PhD just so I can create credit default swaps and destroy the world. That's not how it works. That's really not how it works. Yes, like any industry, it ends up in groupthink, no different than the crypto industry and the ICOs.
Mm-hmm.
We all end up in groupthink, and it fails us, right?
Right.
And people have to keep the two in mind. That very smart people could end up in a lot of trouble. I'm a big options
Yeah.
guy. Yeah, I'm
Okay,
sorry, go ahead.
so what was it like being on Wall Street during the whole Occupy Wall Street movement?
No one cared. It was a bunch of homeless people complaining, right? It
Yeah.
was like the whole Occupy Wall Street thing. It was more funny than anything else. I remember watching The Daily Show and Jon Stewart making fun of it all the time. They occupied that park that nobody even knew the name of. Now I'll never forget it, Zuccotti Park in New York. Were you in New York, by the way, when you were working?
No, so I was based in DC, but I did
Oh, you're
hear
always
about
in
it.
DC. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh,
But one thing I
so
did find funny though was as soon as winter came, like textbook, they ended everything.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was more comical than anything else. It was um, like I'm still not sure what they were, what the point was, right? Look, the '08 financial crisis, it was bad, and I'm trying to remember what what event I was at. I was at a financial event and listening to speakers, and there were like 5 speakers, and someone asked the question, so who would you blame for the '08 financial crisis? And it was amazing how the 5 people on stage had a different answer. One person blamed the government for encouraging loaning money to unqualified people. Another person blamed the what do you call them? The rating agencies for not doing their job and rating this stuff properly. Another person, I mean, like, look, the borrowers have some blame here, right? I mean, if you can or can't afford this house. Just because they're willing to give you a loan doesn't mean that you should take on the loan. You
Very
know?
true, very true.
There was a lot. Yeah, sure. Wall Street had some blame as well. But I remember there was a lot of statements like, look, if somebody wants to buy rotten apples, somebody else is going to sell them rotten apples. Companies that were buying these mortgage debt securities thinking that they can't collapse. Like there was a lot of blame to go around. There isn't a single person to blame. And at the time, I was very critical of the bailouts. I really felt that, look, all the banks should have been allowed to fail. But in hindsight, it makes sense. Look, Countrywide failed. Wachovia Bank failed. Bear Stearns, where I was working, failed. Lehman Brothers failed. Merrill Lynch failed. A lot of companies failed. Now, AIG technically failed. AIG was bailed out to kind of bail out Goldman Sachs. So that was bad, too many connections there.
Mm-hmm.
But if Goldman Sachs would have failed, and if JP Morgan would have failed, that would have been, and Bank of America, who actually took over Countrywide. People don't realize how bad that is. People think that Wall Street got bailed out. Tens of thousands, if not 100,000 people lost their jobs. Nobody wanted to lose their job. Trust me, nobody at Bear Stearns wanted to lose their job. And what people don't realize is if JP Morgan and Bank of America would have failed, and Citibank almost failed, every single business in America could have failed, because how is your small business gonna finance itself with zero credit and the credit cards don't work and you have no credit?
Yeah, that's very big.
Your credit card machine stops working. You can only now accept cash. Your credit line goes under. You can't access your bank account. How are you gonna pay your electric bill? Like, people don't realize that without that bailout, like literally all financial activity for every single business, like your pizza shop, could have stopped functioning.
Wow, this is incredible.
A lot of people underestimate, and even I underestimated at the time. I felt that, the capitalist system should have, ran its course. But just think of it, like if you were a business owner, like
Yeah.
imagine you're a business owner and you can't pay your electric bill, you can't take a payment. A customer comes in, says, "Hey, I want to buy this, whatever, this car from you, I want to buy your used car." And they're like, "Well, I can't sell it to you because there's no bank to give you a loan."
Alone. All right. So as all of that was happening, when did you discover crypto?
So I, in the 2012 election, going into the 2012 election, so now we're talking about 2011, I really started to pay more attention about politics. Like when you're young, you don't really pay attention about politics, and most universities are very liberal, so you're voting Democrat.
Mhm.
And in 2012 election, now that I have a high-paying job, all of a sudden I care about how much money I get to keep, right? Like,
Taxes.
right. It's like it's like everyone's a socialist until you start making money.
That's the truest thing I've heard in a while.
so, so you're making a decent salary. You get your Wall Street job in 2007, 2008, and now you're like, shit, I want to keep my own money. I'm like working my ass off. I'm working 12-hour days. How do I keep my money? So now I'm paying attention to the 2012 election, especially after my family almost kicked me out of the house in 2008 for voting for Obama round one. I was at least
Oh,
smart
really?
enough not to
Wow.
do it for round two. Yeah. So, yeah, you see, what people don't realize is you will never ever find a former Soviet Union, like a former Russian, who's a Democrat. You won't, because like my family and a lot of people that escaped Russia, um, to my family, to my parents and my other relatives that are a little older than me, to them, a Democrat is a communist. I mean, they don't really see much of a difference. They don't. They will never, ever, ever vote for a Democrat. So I think
Very
I'm the only
interesting.
one in my I think I'm the only one in my family who has ever voted for a Democrat at any point. Um, and they will vote Republican no matter what. Okay, I mean, because they escaped the concept of redistribution of income, and that's what Democrats are way
Democrats are
more
doing.
known for. And so after voting for Obama in the first election and realizing that was a mistake, not because I got a high-paying job on Wall Street, but a few years later when he didn't do anything that he promised to do, but that's no different than any politician. Though ironically, Trump is trying to build that wall, which I think is kind of ridiculous. But like, it's funny, like the promises you don't want them to do, they end up trying to do. And the promises you want them to do, they never even attempt. Have you felt
Mhm.
this way from politicians?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, I've always been around politics, just being based in DC, right? And my parents are always watching news almost all the time. Every time the TV is on, it's always on a news channel. But when I was going through college, I just kind of tuned out politics because there was just too much of it.
Mm-hmm.
And nowadays, even now, I don't really follow politics much. I mean, I do follow the debates every now and then just for entertainment. But in a way, growing up, I was a Democrat, but now I think probably after graduate school, I became an independent, right? So I
Yeah.
don't really align with any party, right? I'm kind of free flowing. It actually depends on the candidates and the points and what they're trying to really sell to the country, as opposed to being staunch for one particular party forever.
Oh, yeah, no, I'm with you. I'm actually registered as an independent. And it was in 2011 that I started paying attention to being an independent and the Libertarian Party. And that's how it got me to Bitcoin. So the only way you can get information about the Libertarian Party was through alternative media, like Al Jazeera and
Mm.
RT.
Yes,
And
yeah.
I started watching more and more RT. And that's when I discovered Max Kaiser's show and a show called Capital Account. I'm not sure if it's still going on or not. back in the day, it was Lauren Lister was the host. And Max Kaiser basically introduced me to Bitcoin through his show. Back in 2011, I was also following the Ron Paul campaign, which RT was covering very, very nicely. And I was introduced to, it was very early 2011. I almost want to say 2010, but probably like January, February 2011, because I remember the first use case of Bitcoin registering in my brain, which was funding of WikiLeaks, because they had just gotten cut off from Visa, MasterCard, and PayPal. And that use case was interesting to me, that WikiLeaks was going to accept Bitcoin for donations because it was a way to get around the censorship of payments. That's when it came on my radar. I didn't do anything about it. I wish I had bought it then. You know, I could have been the Roger Ver of the crypto space had I done that back in 2011, like him. Now, Bitcoin kept popping up on Max Kaiser's show, and mostly Max Kaiser's show. And in 2012, I Googled Bitcoin finally, again, going into the election of 2012. I was going to vote for Ron Paul. Ron Paul got, you know, scammed out of the finals, and I ended up voting for Gary Johnson as the Libertarian. It was a wasted vote.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to win anyway. But it was either Obama again or Romney, and you know, wasn't a big fan of either. So,
very interesting. So you kind of were really into the whole libertarian movement, right?
Yeah.
Because actually myself as well, I was very into Ron Paul. Actually, I would say Ron Paul is kind of probably the first person who convinced me not to be a Democrat.
Yeah. Yeah, no, Ron Paul was absolutely great. I was also a gold bug at the time. I started buying a bunch of, I wasn't buying gold in 2011. That would have been insane. I would have been buying them at the top. But I started buying gold coins and silver coins like around 2013, 2014. I believe they're finally profitable. I'm not as much of a believer in gold and silver now that I was back then. Educated myself a little further, but I'm getting off topic here. So in 2012, I Googled Bitcoin because I kept hearing about it. And everything that showed up on my Google search had to do with mining. And I remember saying to myself, man, I don't have time for this. I don't have time to be mining Bitcoin. And I ignored it once again. In 2013, with the events of Cyprus and the bank money confiscation out of your account, that really scared me. And I said, oh my God, if that can happen in a European country, that can happen anywhere. Like the government can just confiscate my money out of my bank account. The government can just confiscate my retirement account. And on those Cyprus confiscations around March and April of 2013, I Googled Bitcoin again and I discovered local Bitcoins. And the first thing I remember saying to myself is, holy shit, you're telling me I could have just bought this stuff in 2012? Everything that showed up was mining. Like, I didn't know you can just like buy it. Like, I didn't think about it, right? Like, yeah, you work in Wall Street, you're busy, you have a, it was, I wasn't living in Manhattan. It would be a 1 hour commute to work, 1 hour commute from work. It was just, a busy lifestyle, 9 hours a day at work or whatever it was. And so in 2013, I finally went out and I bought some Bitcoin and never looked back. Eventually.
Now, quick question on that. So you bought Bitcoin on local Bitcoins. Now, was that kind of awkward for you in terms of having to meet a stranger from some random website, probably in some random public location, to give him cash or money in exchange for a virtual currency, right? Take me through that process as you're going to buy your first Bitcoin.
Yeah, it was an interesting experience. And I was very, very careful. New York City is a big city, but I was still careful. I made sure I did it during the day. I made sure I did it at a public place. And I made sure I found someone with, a good review history. So just like you're buying from eBay, just like you're buying on Amazon, you check reviews. You check reviews, you try to trust the reviews. and you meet someone at a public place. And the first time I did it, I only bought a few $100 worth of Bitcoin. Like I wasn't gonna bring thousands of dollars there. In hindsight, I wish I did. But all it takes is, a little bit. All it takes is a few $100 to get you started. But back then, there weren't too many wallets. There wasn't that much, too many resources. Yeah. So you got to figure out how to install a wallet on your phone. And then, you give someone a few $100 and, pray that the Bitcoin works. And it did. And once you buy some Bitcoin, once you buy enough Bitcoin that you care about it, like if you only bought $10, $20 worth of Bitcoin, you're not going to care. But once we're talking $1,000 or $2,000 worth of Bitcoin, you're going to care. And when you start caring, you start reading articles about it and you start to become interested. And so that's all it was. So throughout the entire year of 2013, I didn't know anyone with a Bitcoin. None of my friends, none of my family members, none of my colleagues. They were all making fun of me for even buying it, because when you buy it, you can't shut up about it. And I didn't know anyone. Just Max Kaiser, who I'm listening to on TV, right? Just like Andreas Antonopoulos and I think Eric Voorhees was doing interviews, and Roger Ver, just some of the guys online, basically. It wasn't until 2014 when the New York Bitcoin Center opened right down the street from my job in early 2014. And I remember like around March of 2014, I show up at this Bitcoin Center, and that's when I meet, other people that have Bitcoin or other people that like Bitcoin. And that led me to attend my first conference in 2014 in New York, Inside Bitcoins in New York. And a month later, they were having another conference in Hong Kong. And the company that I worked for at the time was a smaller company, but we had an office in Hong Kong, and I was working with the people in Hong Kong. So my company was more than happy for me to fly out to Hong Kong at my own expense, because I wanted to attend another Bitcoin conference. But not only that, I requested to speak at that conference just based on my Wall Street experience and me being a Bitcoiner. So there's really no such thing as luck. There is taking advantages of the opportunities in front of you. I attended my first Bitcoin conference, and I really enjoyed it. And I remember saying to myself, I can be on stage with these people. I know more than half of the people I heard speak. So
now, was that about crypto or just the markets in general?
Crypto, both. The markets and crypto, because it was a Bitcoin conference. And I said, you know what? I know I don't have a crypto company. I know I don't work in the crypto space, but I can be on stage and I can do better than half these guys. So I emailed the conference. I made friends with the organizer of the conference while I was attending in New York. And I got myself a speaking gig in Hong Kong. And it was, I think it was the third time I ever left the country. Prior to that, maybe not the third time, maybe fourth or fifth time, but I went to, my first trip out of the country was actually to Trinidad, because a friend that was working with me went to Trinidad for Carnival. After that, I had another friend. We went to the Philippines, and after that, it was like the Caribbean. I think I went to maybe Dominican Republic. I want to say maybe, and like maybe Bermuda or something like that. Not much. And then I flew out to Hong Kong, which I found fascinating. And I spoke at that conference. And after that, I had a passion for this stuff, and that's what I do now: traveling, speaking, educating. And the kind of passion I had in my early days of Wall Street that progressed me really, really quickly, becoming a VP, becoming a manager, getting good bonuses, because I worked hard. I wasn't always the smartest guy in the room, but I was always on time. I always listened. When people asked me to do something, I got it done. I was pretty respected. And it's just hard work. And once I spoke at that first conference, everything started to change. I was asked to write for Cointelegraph. A couple of crypto companies wanted to almost hire me right away. I stayed on Wall Street one more year. I've made a lot of mistakes in 2015, which we can talk about. But I quit my job in very early 2015 to join the crypto space, and I pretty much still have the passion for it. We'll see if that lasts. I'm already eyeing other interests. I tend to get bored with careers and completely switch, because when you switch, you just go all out for 4 to 5 years. I never really wanted to teach trading. I actually quit my job to finally be an independent trader. I wanted to be a trader and speak at conferences on the side. But speaking at conferences and then creating my own YouTube channel to get my opinions out, it became too time consuming, and trading had to take a break. And I never really wanted to teach trading, but how do you monetize speaking at conferences? Andreas is doing it kind of okay. Saifedean is doing it kind of okay, but it's very difficult. I mean, they both have books. They're both way better charismatic speakers than I am, and they actually have a career as public speakers in the space and book writers. I don't. I don't think I'm ever going to write a book. That's just not what I'm good at.
Okay, so let's go back to that tipping point, right? So you saw people on this website. You said, I can speak better than half of these people, right? Have you always been that confident, or was it something you kind of developed?
No, I was that confident because of my background in education. So being a high school teacher and being a college professor have made me very comfortable on stage. And being on Wall Street, you get the confidence, you know when you know something. Like when you were on Wall Street, what field, what did you work in?
Oh, so actually, yeah, I worked in DC. I worked at IBM for 4 years in IBM Analytics.
Oh, you worked at IBM Analytics. Man, why did I think you were in finance?
No. So my background is in being an engineer. I was a computer engineer, bachelor's and master's, did IT consulting at Deloitte, then worked at IBM.
Yeah, the thing is, when you have your own specialty, like you know when you're confident and right at a specific subject. And the difference is I spent a good year and a half doing nothing but studying Bitcoin. And I knew I understood it. And I'm not going to say I was a Bitcoin maximalist back in 2014. Back in 2014, a lot of us thought that these altcoins like Litecoin and some of the others, Darkcoin became Dash, and some of the others, they were interesting to us back then. Most people, I would say, went through their altcoin phase. My altcoin phase was very short. I realized by like in 2014, early 2014, I was into altcoins, and by mid to late 2014, I realized that they were not going to amount to anything in the future, though I was clearly wrong that people speculated on them, but I still don't see any fundamental use case for them. And I think I will be proven right eventually. However, I had that confidence just based on my prior experiences. And when I was leaving Wall Street, I was in the same I was doing the same thing for 9 years. And I was very confident in it. It was data analysis. It was writing queries in the database. I wouldn't have even gotten that job if I didn't learn SQL. So I understood databases. I understood stored procedures. I understood how to query databases. I understood how to manage data. I understood how to work with data and scrub data and clean data for risk models. I understood the whole risk modeling space. And all throughout that time, all my spare time was spent trading and learning trading and learning technical analysis and trading on the side. And it was very hard to trade. I'd sit there in meetings and like try to trade with my cell phone. And I mean, I was still somewhat profitable, but not great. And I always wanted to quit my job and be a trader because that was my passion. And it still is my passion, which I will, but trading isn't going anywhere. It was the same 40 years ago and it's the same today. The only difference is now we have computers.
Okay, so one question on trading. Did you learn all of your trading know-how in college during your graduate degree, or was it more of something that you also learned yourself?
Right. So they don't teach trading in college ever. So I took a course. The kind of courses that I teach, my old college roommate from undergrad, who was a business major, convinced me to take these courses with him. And the courses were $8,000. So basically what I teach today for $1,000, I paid $8,000 back in like 2004 or 2003, something to that effect. So that's where I learned how to trade. So I paid for a 3-day long course. It was like 7 hours a day for 2 or 3 days. And I took 2 of them. I took one on introduction to trading with technical analysis. And the second course I took about 6 months later was on options. And I absolutely fell in love with options. And options became my specialty. Me and that same friend, we designed our own trading strategies with options. We made actually pretty good money during the collapse. They were very profitable, but we had very little money to allocate to this. And once I got my job, my Wall Street job, I couldn't focus too much on trading because I wanted to focus on my Wall Street career. It was about 7 years later so once again, I took a break from trading. So I'm constantly going into trading and out of trading. So I started out as trading. And then, like I said, I ended up blowing up my first account shorting real estate. Then I got my job. And the moment I got my job, I actually also started trading again because now I had some money coming in and I can open a portfolio. And we made good money alongside my job by trading the markets. But then the job started to get more and more complicated. I started to have more and more responsibilities. And I had to choose, do I want to focus on my career on Wall Street or do I want to continue trading? And I chose the career. So around 2010, I stopped trading again. But then around 2012 and 13, I left the big banks and I went to a smaller company for the sole purpose of not having any trading restrictions. I wanted my last job on Wall Street was I took a smaller salary to go to a smaller company that also build risk models, but in a way that we did not have access to any proprietary trading information from hedge funds. And that allowed me to trade without permission. It allowed me not to have to go through the HR department telling them what stocks I'm holding and what stocks I'm buying. And now in that last job, I was both working and focusing on my trading, which actually meant I wasn't very good at my job. And when I first started there in my first year, I was concentrating very much. But by my 3rd year in that new job, between now being all over Bitcoin and trying to trade, I was becoming a very horrible employee. And I eventually quit that job in early 2015, which was a big mistake because it was still a high salary job. And I quit at the low of the Bitcoin price when it was like $250. And Bitcoin didn't start rising until the end of 2015. And after I quit my job, I had this really sad feeling like, oh my God, wait a minute. I can't buy any more Bitcoin. I don't have any more money coming in. And life could have been a lot different if I would have stayed at that job one more year And I would have been converting my what, $130,000 salary into Bitcoin all throughout 2015, when the price of Bitcoin was no more than $500. I mean, just do the math. Instead, I had to live on my savings, and I couldn't buy any Bitcoin in 2015 because I had no income coming in, and I was building out my business. I was trading, but you know, trading is not easy either. It's pretty stressful, and you want to make sure that you have enough to pay all your bills. I started a physical business in 2014 as well, and that was a mistake. That business wasn't doing too well.
What kind of business was it?
It was a therapy office.
Therapy,
It was a massage therapy, a sports massage therapy. I was always like an athlete. I was always into that kind of stuff as well. I played volleyball back in high school, tried out in college. I was still playing on Division A club volleyball teams when I got into Bitcoin and quit my job. But then I just got too busy. So
I find it very interesting. So you said when you quit your job, you had to now go from kind of buying crypto and actually spending crypto to just kind of finance your businesses, everything. And I've gone through the same exact thing, right? When I quit my job at IBM, the money was good because I had some cash. But once the market kind of began going down, I actually had to begin selling some crypto just to kind of finance our crypto world tour and all these other business ventures I was doing. So what was your mindset as you were actually having to spend crypto?
I still only spent it on things that I really, really wanted. I remember like the Bitcoin watch that I wear. We're not going to talk about how much that cost me because that came on sale at the lowest possible price of Bitcoin when it was like $300 or something per Bitcoin, or like $250 even. So, you know, in hindsight, you lose a lot of Bitcoin spending it on stupid things. And the thing is, and you bought it at a more expensive price. So when people are like, oh, what about taxes? I'm like, you know what? I lost money on this thing. You know, I couldn't even claim it all because you're only allowed to write off $3,000 per year, right? Like, I lost way more.
Now, when you quit your job, take us through that moment. What made you really go all in on crypto?
That's the thing. I wasn't going all in on crypto because I don't like to go all in on anything. I like to, after I learned my lesson in 2007 when I blew up my first trading account. So I wasn't all in on crypto. I had crypto, potential crypto career as a public speaker that I enjoyed. I was going to be a trader, trading traditional markets. I was opening a physical business. So I diversified across those three things. And the physical business did not work out. And I also invested in some crypto companies. I thought I can play at the VC card, and I lost a lot of money there too. So I diversified, and what won is my passion for traveling and educating about Bitcoin, and I'm able to finance my travels by teaching people how to be traders. And maybe in a few years, I'll start trading again and open my own fund.
Okay. Now, what was it like trading crypto compared to traditional markets once you kind of began getting into it?
You know, I never liked trading crypto. I traded crypto for a little bit in the early days, but I found it to be too illiquid, too volatile, too easily moved by someone with $1 million. And even to this day, I still prefer to trade the traditional markets with options. That's still my skill set. People say that trading crypto is easier. To me, it's not. I like the safety and security of traditional markets. I find it very troubling that my crypto is at risk. My crypto is too valuable to me. Remember, the number one reason that got me into crypto It wasn't the fact that crypto is a finite supply of 21 million Bitcoin. It wasn't the reasons like Saifedean hard money. And it wasn't the reasons like Andreas's censorship resistance and that use case of WikiLeaks and Silk Road. For me, it was the unconfiscatability property to prevent a future Cyprus. And the Greek incidents as well, where they didn't give you access to your money. To me, Bitcoin is too valuable to risk on an exchange. It's too valuable to let Coinbase control your private key. Mm-hmm. And I don't want to do anything that endangers my Bitcoin, you know?
Very interesting.
I had some Bitcoin on BTC-E. I had some Bitcoin on Cryptsy. All of that's gone. Okay. It's too valuable. So I don't want to trade Bitcoin. I will trade derivatives on Bitcoin. I will trade I'm happy to trade the CME futures of Bitcoin in a regulated way. But the reason why I don't is because Bitcoin trades 7 days a week and the CME futures only trade 5 days a week. So you see the conflict here.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to be stuck in a trade for only 3 to 4 days and forced to exit on Friday. I want to exit when I want to exit. So,
does that mean that you're now basically a long-term hodler for Bitcoin and then you trade options?
I'm at the moment, I'm not really trading at all. But when I do get into trading, I don't think it's going to be crypto. I mean, maybe I'll trade Bitcoin if I see a good opportunity in a very liquid market that, you know, is regulated. But if I got back into trading tomorrow, it would be traditional markets. It would be options on equities and maybe futures, gold, silver, oil. I used to trade those as well, and futures on the S&P 500.
So no BitMEX or Bybit or any of that?
No, I don't think so. I think it's too risky. I mean, it's these are something like BitMEX. I mean, they're now being investigated by the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, the CFTC.
Yeah,
and I don't know what's going to happen, right? Like, I don't know if the hammer is going to come down from the U.S. regulators on BitMEX the way it did with one broker. I remember I was trading on one broker as well. Thank God one broker allowed you to withdraw your funds. Like, I don't know what's going to happen. And I wouldn't risk it. I mean, if I was to risk it, I tell people, do not trade with more than 10% of your Bitcoin. If you have 10 Bitcoin, only trade with one. You don't want to put them at risk. They can get hacked. They can get confiscated. Anything can happen.
Now, I have tried telling, as somebody who also has a large audience, I have tried telling people in crypto that. But one thing I've done, people in crypto don't really listen. I've told people never put more than 10% of your portfolio, of your crypto income or portfolio into an altcoin. And you hear people going all in, going 50%. And yeah, I think risk management is definitely something lacking in the crypto space. But I want to kind of go back to how you built your large following online, right? So you began doing public speaking, conferences. You had experience as a professor, as a high school teacher. When did you really start kind of getting a large following on Twitter, on YouTube?
Yeah, you know, it was, people wanted to hear what I had to say. I didn't force it on anyone. I spoke at my first conference, and numerous YouTube channels wanted to interview me. So I was happy to do it. Cointelegraph wanted me to write for them. I decided to start writing about what I knew the most, which was trading and technical analysis. You can still find those articles. Just Google Tone Vays Cointelegraph. And I kind of went with the market. World Crypto Network interviewed me once, then twice, then 3 times. And then I became a regular, a weekly guest. Then we started our own show about markets, and then I was a guest for the news show. And then there was demand. People were saying, Tone, when are you going to start your YouTube channel? Tone, when are you going to start your YouTube channel? So I did. So I followed the demand. But I think what really, the way I resonated with the viewers more than most other people is it was two things. One, my unreasonable, brutal honesty. And two, my disregard for political correctness and being nice to people. I spoke my mind and I was honest about it. And I think that was different for a lot of people. And that's how I build my large audience. But in a way, that's also in the last year or so, it has actually cost me some of my audience because I called the bear market correctly. And while people hated me for it, they respected the fact that I was right about the bear market. But here in 2019, I've been very skeptical of the current rise in Bitcoin. And that has caused a lot of animosity towards me and my views, but I've never stepped away from my roots of getting here, which was speaking my mind and being honest. And right now, I am a little concerned about the $10,000 price of Bitcoin. And I honestly think it's going to go lower. And if people don't appreciate that view or are angry about it, they don't have to watch my channel. And my numbers have actually been dropping a little bit, mostly because everyone is now calling me a perma bear. And they forget the fact that I was one of the biggest bulls out of anyone in crypto between 2016 and 2017. And in 2014, when I came on the scene, I was a bear because that's what the charts told me.
Okay. Now, I do have to ask you this, though, because last time I did see you in Hong Kong at the conference, I think you were definitely very skeptical on the rise of price of Bitcoin. Bitcoin was around 3,000 or 4,000. Then it took off going to 14,000, right?
Yes.
So and now it's down to 10,000, and you're still kind of skeptical based off of what in particular is kind of telling you this is not a stable price?
Mostly because I'm watching the environment and I don't see too many new people coming into the space. So the question is, where is this rise coming from? The 2016 and 2017 rise, I understand. So many new people came into the space. But this year, like if you do a Google search for the words buy Bitcoin, it's non-existent. So I couldn't explain the rise. In hindsight, I believe that the big rise from 6,000 to 14,000 was the exit out of altcoins. It was the Bitcoin dominance rising. I underestimated that only for Bitcoin to go from 50% to 70% because Bitcoin is so illiquid. That's all that was needed to get it up that much. There was also some institutional investment, but I think it's less than a lot of people think it is. I really think it was the exodus out of altcoins. And while I think that
that does make sense.
And while I think that there is some more room for more people to exit the altcoins, I think enough people have exited the altcoins. And right now, if the altcoin exodus has ended and there's nobody left to buy Bitcoin, I think the price can correct and correct hard. And that scares me right now.
Wow. Okay. Very, very interesting. Yeah. I mean, because even me, right? People kind of called the bottom of, I guess, crypto, or the beginning of the alt season when I began turning into the Bitcoin maximalist. Even though I still like some alts, but I began to really become very jaded and skeptical on almost 95% of altcoins out there, which was kind of the opposite of what I was known for as kind of the ICO guy or ICO king, right? So even me myself, right, I kind of began to see how valuable Bitcoin was, right? Because so I know you mentioned earlier, you had your own alt season phase, but it was very short-lived, right? I think mine was kind of very long-lived. Nowadays, I'm not so bullish on alts. I mean, I don't think Bitcoin is going to be the only currency out there, the only cryptocurrency out there, but I do think 95% of them will get cleansed out. Okay, so I do
See,
have
I have
some. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
just real quick, like I do have my argument for why I do think the Bitcoin will probably be the only one out there is because the cryptocurrency space, we don't have laws. We don't have laws to force people to use a currency. There's no government of Litecoin that forces certain people to use Litecoin. Like if you travel around the world, if the government of Nigeria didn't force people to use their currency, don't you think more people would be using the most stable and most valuable currency in the world, the US dollar?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what I see. Like the reason why we have so many currencies today is because their governments force you to use it with their guns. But if the free market can choose the best currency, they will go for the one that's most valuable and most stable. So unless, you know, these altcoins end up with, you know, regions where they force you to pay taxes in that altcoin, I find it hard to believe that the free market will choose them over Bitcoin.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally on point with that. So I do have some questions that I do want to ask you as well. Just kind of more to kind of understand how tone-based the person thinks. So can you tell us 3 books that changed your life? Not to put you on
Wow.
the spot.
I was never very big on reading books. It's just not something I was, I read kind of slow. So I prefer even today, I prefer my books on tape. While the Bitcoin standard did not change my life because I already knew Bitcoin and I kind of had a pretty good understanding of money, I would strongly recommend that book to people. As far as
Bitcoin
books that,
Standard. Okay.
yeah, by Seyfedin. As far as the books that actually changed my life, and I read them kind of late, I remember, I, I barely remember any books I read in high school. I remember reading Brave New World and thought it was interesting, but I wasn't a very good student. I didn't really pay
How
attention
about the
much.
books on tape or the audiobooks? Same thing,
Well,
right?
it doesn't matter, right? It's the same thing. I would say everyone has to read George Orwell. You got to read Animal Farm and 1984, whether it's on tape or
Okay,
in the
so
physical book.
Bitcoin
I,
Standard.
I yeah, I personally preferred Animal Farm as the better of the two, but they're both great. Um, that's really about it. And for me, it was textbooks. I was never a good novel reader. I'd rather watch a movie. But I've read a lot of textbooks. I've read a lot of, I
What
didn't even read a lot of
textbooks?
trading books. Um, like, uh, like in my financial degree, we like a quantitative finance, you know, like quantitative theory of finance, options, futures, and other derivatives. Like even today, like if I was to go back to school, I'm almost more comfortable reading, let's say, a physics book, a physics textbook, or a chemistry textbook than a novel. Like I just can't get into it. Like it's weird. Maybe my brain works differently. I was always mathematically inclined. I was good at science. I have a degree in geology. I've taken, you know, advanced chemistry, advanced physics, a little bit of biology. I've taken astronomy. These are the kinds of, like, the sciences really fascinate me more. Never was big on computer science. I learned my programming. I've done my programming. Never really was big on that. And if I was to go back and study something, it's going to be nutrition, because now I'm a little more fascinated by the whole nutrition angle.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not going to go and get a doctorate. I'm not going to be a doctor, but the medical field, as it relates to nutrition, is something that fascinates me. And for me today, I would much rather read a book about nutrition than a novel. But that's
Okay.
me.
Well said. Now, I did see you. I think there was a picture of you trending on Twitter of you buff. I guess you've been working out.
I'm trying to. It's really hard because I'm on the road. I'm traveling 10 months a year, but I try to be efficient. When I am home, when I'm in the US, I try to go to my CrossFit style gym. And every time I do, I start to feel good. And then I go hard and then I end up getting hurt. Usually I hurt my back or something else, which is another reason why I opened a massage therapy office, because that was something that I was involved in and, very interested in, the health aspect of things. And I try to just do some push-ups and crunches as I travel. If I'm at a hotel with a gym, I try to use the pull-up bar. I'm not really big into weights. Only when I come home and I use the CrossFit gym do I do weights. I think that everything can be achieved with push-ups, pull-ups, and crunches, maybe a kettlebell. You don't need much. You just need to be efficient. I'm a big fan of minimizing the time of my workout. I would rather do one set of push-ups, as many as I can do, than do like 3 sets of 40 or 3 sets of 50. Try to be as efficient as possible. But yeah, I try to be in shape, and it's been working out for me.
That's good. That's good. So you're minimalist in a way.
Yeah. The ladies like it when you take your shirt off and it's unexpected that you actually have muscle.
Yeah, I think that's always a good thing. Okay, next question I have for you to kind of learn more about you. Who have been the three most influential people in your life or even in history?
Wow. So again, I've gone through so many different stages. It's really even hard to pinpoint three most influential people. Because I'm a Bitcoiner now, and I learned about it from Max Kaiser. I mean, I almost have to put him on that list because that changed my entire career path. It kind of made me what I am today, sitting here with you. So Max Kaiser has been very influential for my current career.
Max Kaiser is the guy with the show on RT?
Yeah.
On Russian TV? Okay.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. I didn't really have too many influential people that got me into trading. I wish I knew Tyler Jenks, who passed away recently, and he was doing videos with me on my YouTube channel as an investor for 40 years to learn it earlier from him. And man, maybe Ron Paul again. The whole libertarian angle of it really changed the way I look at politics and the way I look at things. I don't really want to point to too many high school teachers or anything like that because everything I do now is so different than what I was doing back then. So I'd like to focus on the influencers that got me to my current point, not the influencers that got me through other careers that I ended up leaving.
Okay, I think that's a good segue to the next question. What have been the three biggest tipping points in your life that got you to where you are? I think you may have touched on some of them.
I think it's the same things. The tipping points, realizing how important money is and how it needs to be unconfiscatable. That was a huge tipping point for my current career. Realizing that teaching people that don't want to learn was not my career. That was a tipping point. Like being a high school teacher for 1 year and then saying, I'll never, ever do this again. I like teaching, but I don't like teaching. I don't like forced teaching. I'm not good at it. My personality isn't good for this. That was another very critical point, making that decision. And trying to think. And, honestly, learning a valuable lesson on money management by shorting the real estate market too early. It taught me that I knew what I was doing in the markets. I just needed to have better risk management. And I have a whole course now teaching people risk management because of how critical it is. I'd say those three things: learning trading and learning a valuable lesson in my first fund, my first portfolio, I shouldn't say fund. Yeah. And the whole starting to watch RT, learning about money, and libertarianism, and realizing that being a high school teacher is not going to be my career.
Well said. Well said. Yeah, I think that quote you said earlier in the interview: markets stay irrational longer than you can stay liquid. I think that's very well said. All right. Well, we're almost over with the show. Any last words? Maybe kind of tell us what you're working on nowadays. You mentioned teaching, the courses.
Yeah. So I also noticed that my courses, while used to draw a big crowd, no longer do. And that also tells me that there's not new traders coming in. It's the same old traders. And my courses are nowhere near in demand like they were a year ago or 2 years ago. And like all good businessmen, we have to pivot.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of trying to force courses, I'm trying to pivot towards my core audience, those that learned from me years ago and remain traders. So now I'm building tools for them. I was always against subscriptions because I don't want people following my trades. I don't want that. I want to teach people to make their own trades. But there is an indicator that I use often, and I'm building out this notification service basically for myself. And if I start trading again, and this notification service tells you when the syndicator does certain things. And we're going to open that to the subscription to the traders that know how to trade this indicator. Also putting together a high-end event in Bali coming up this October, where I want to connect traders and hedge funds looking for traders and traders looking for capital that hedge funds could provide. Also, high net worth retired individuals or high net worth business owners that want to take better control of their finances, to educate them more on investing and trading so they can manage their own money, and try to connect traders with developers so they can work together and build strategies that can be automated. Maybe not on this one, but if this event becomes popular, bring in miners. Hey, miners, you guys should learn how to hedge your income or how to hedge your future income the way a corn farmer does, which is why futures contracts even exist. So I want to connect money management with traders, basically, not capital for money management. And this event is called the Financial Summit. The first one is taking place in Bali. I also have other conferences. One is to educate about the power usages of Bitcoin. It's in Malta. It's called Understanding Bitcoin. Understandingbtc.com is the website. And this is where Bitcoin developers, including those from Blockstream, I'm wearing their sweatshirt. I'm not affiliated. I just like the company. They come and they educate how to use the privacy features of Bitcoin, how to use Lightning, how to use the sidechain Liquid to build your products on. So that's more of an educational about Bitcoin. And my other conference is Uconfiscatable. It takes place in Vegas. It's a fun conference about everything Bitcoin and crypto, with an awesome poker tournament in the casino's poker room.
Wow, that's awesome. So that's understandingbitcoin.com. Then the Financial Summit. What's the site for that? For our audience?
It's actually called The Financial Summit. TheFinancialSummit.com, UnderstandingBTC.com, and Uconfiscatable.com. I want to bring the word unconfiscatable into the dictionary.
That's a mouthful. That's a mouthful, though.
It doesn't exist. The word didn't exist. That's why I own the domain. I own the brand. Basically, Uconfiscatable is me.
All right. And I'm guessing also ToneVays.com?
And ToneVays.com is everything flows from that. Yeah, ToneVays.com, ToneVays on YouTube, ToneVays on Twitter, ToneVays on Instagram. But be careful for imposters and scammers. It's so bad.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, well, let's end with one last question. What advice do you have for the crypto community or the audience watching this video or podcast?
Protect your private keys. Protect your Bitcoin. Put it into Bitcoin. Don't tell anybody you have it. It's too late for guys like us. Protect those private keys and stack more sats. Accumulate as much Bitcoin as you can and protect it like your life depends on it, because one day it might.
Well said, well said. Well, thank you, Tone Vays. It was a pleasure. Definitely a great interview. If you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook or podcast, be sure to subscribe and like and share this with your audience and the community. And yeah, thank you so much for being on the 100X show. It was a pleasure. Until next time.
Thank you.